right. Hello, J.MAK students, and welcome to MAK.STERS by J.MAK. Thank you for being here with us as we learn about all things Colombia with Brian from True Colombia Travel. For those that don't know me, I'm Meg Crosby, hospitality personality at J.MAK based in Raleigh, North Carolina. You can always reach out to me and our team by emailing hi@jmak.com for any questions about any of our partners. Today, after the presentation, we're going to open up the floor for a brief Q&A session. So go ahead and put any questions that you have during Brian's presentation in the chat box or the Q&A, and we'll get to those after. And then we are taking a little bit of a break. I have a couple road shows coming up in July, but we will have some more MAK.STERS classes the week of the 22nd and then through August and September. So you can view all of those upcoming events by visiting the events page on jmak.com. So thank you for your continued support. And without further ado, Brian, I will hand it on over to you.
Perfect. Thank you, Meg. And hi again to everyone who's here. Hopefully we'll have a few more people spilling in as we go. And there's kind of two goals of the presentation today. One is to give you an idea of who we are at True Colombia and what we do. And then two is to give you a little bit of a primer on Colombia, just because I know it's not one of the most common countries, so a lot of people want to learn a little bit about it, and there is so much to do. If anybody has questions in the meantime, go ahead and type them into the chat. If it's a specific point of the presentation, feel free to have Meg step in. No problem whatsoever. Otherwise, we'll chat at the end. I don't know if anyone can raise their hand or write in the box. Has anybody been to Colombia before or been to any of the cities here? I know Meg has. Not yet. That's the right answer. I like that. Okay, perfect. So I'm going to jump in. I'm going to share my screen. And all right. Is everyone able to see that? Is it working?
Looks great.
Okay, perfect. So the name of our the name of our company is True Colombia Travel. Our style of working is to create authentic connections to help people have a lasting impact and understand what it is to truly be here in Colombia. I like to tell people that we are sort of the three musketeers. So myself, Ana Maria, and Santiago. Ana and Santi are my two business partners. And we actually founded two companies, which I'll tell you about. And we're both with J.MAK, which is True Colombia Travel, our DMC, and Cannua, which is the country's first high-end sustainable eco lodge. You can probably tell from my accent that I grew up in the United States. I'm the only one who did on the team, which is really important. So Ana and Santi both grew up here. Everybody who works with us, works for us, grew up here. And that is very important because we are very, very committed to local, sustainable, responsible, authentic, high-end Colombian tourism. I'm based in Medellin, Colombia, where I'm having the call from right now. And I've been here for the last 10 years. So our companies are awesome. We're both very, very proud to be with J.MAK. The hotel is also a member of Mr. and Mrs. Smith, as well as the National Geographic Travelers Experiences Collection. We're founding members of Secretos de Colombia, which is a soft brand alliance of the best hotels in the country. We participated at Remote Latin America. Next year, I'll be with True Colombia at Remote in Brazil. They're going to be doing two next year, one in Guatemala and one in Brazil. If anyone's interested, great show. And I participated for the last couple of years at LE Miami as well. So what makes us different? Well, it starts really with the three of us and the type of personality that we imbue onto the businesses. So honestly, none of us come from traditional tourism backgrounds. Ana is a licensed veterinarian. Santi studied philosophy. He worked in Brazil. He worked in Argentina before coming back to Colombia. I like to tell people I'm a recovering consultant. The point is that we approach tourism and we approach Colombia through a lens of pure interest in wanting to come up with the absolute best spots. And that's what we look for in our team members as well. So somebody comes to us and they say, hey, look, I really want to work with you. I've studied tourism. In general, we actually won't even give them the interview. We want to look for people who have a diverse background set. So they're photographers or historians or political experts, things like that. We want to make sure that clients are with the absolute best personalities every single day, people who are extraordinarily passionate and are going to give them information and views on life in Colombia that are far beyond what you would normally find just going around the country. Everything that we try to do is experiential. We want people to tether themselves to a deep personal connection with the country. So when I say experiential, when I say exclusive, when I say undiscovered, I'm not saying it because those are cool buzzwords, which they also are, but because that's actually how we work. So Anna and I come from research backgrounds. And because of that, we spend a big portion of our year doing research and investigation and looking for the coolest spots in Colombia. So I'll give an example. I was just talking with Meg about this big Carnival festival that I go to with this group of photographers every year. You can see a picture of one of them up there in the top left. And if you see that curly-haired guy, his name is Oscar. And Don Oscar does an art form called Barniz de Pasto. Barniz de Pasto is probably something you've never heard of. Actually, most Colombians have never heard of it, which is a shame because it was declared by UNESCO to be a World Heritage art form. And it's something the indigenous have been doing for thousands of years, probably somewhere between 2,000 and 4,000. It is incredible. It's in museums all around the world. And unfortunately, there's only 30 people left on the planet who know how to do it. And of those 30, there's only 5 that are considered to be masters. And they all live in this one small town in the southern border of Colombia. So you can imagine they're very busy because they have this artwork that's going all around the world and it's almost impossible to understand how they do things. But because Anna and I go down year after year and we form those relationships, we get to go into Oscar's workshop. And he shows us everything from this little bud that sprouts on a tree in the Amazon that's collected by the same indigenous family that his family has been working with for generations to becoming this incredible, beautiful, ornate piece that's going to end up in a major museum in Europe. So whether it's meeting people like him, whether it's meeting, one of the founders of the Medellin Flower Festival, one of the most important private libraries, high-end cooking class, or going to the country's first internationally certified coffee farm. Those are the types of places that we are looking to take clients. We don't believe in low-hanging fruit. We believe in looking for the absolute best wow moment. And that starts with our team too. Our team is awesome. Everybody is minimum bilingual in English and Spanish. We have other languages on the team as well, like French and Portuguese. If anybody needs any other languages, we can absolutely find that. We have a full-time LGBTQ director, Felipe Sanchez, who Meg knows as well. He can work with any clients that are looking for LGBTQ specific trips. We have passionate divers and other backgrounds, and we are 24/7, which is really, really important to us. So when your client travels with us, the first 2 numbers they're going to get are my number and Ana Maria's. And if it's okay with you, if it's okay with the client, we're going to open up a WhatsApp group before they ever arrive so that we can answer any questions, so that we can make sure everything is absolutely perfect at any moment, because we understand it's the client's trip. It's not ours. We want to make sure it's perfect for them, and we want to create that long-term relationship. Our goal with every single client is that they go back home and they immediately write or call you and say, wow, thank you. That is one of the coolest places I've ever visited. Everything was perfect. Okay, that's a little bit about it. So let's talk a little bit about Colombia for a second, because it is a little bit of a sort of an exotic destination. It's grown a ton in the last few years, which is awesome. But there's a lot to sort of understand about the country. So in terms of Latin America, it's a little bit of a needle in a haystack. I'm going to do one of my favorite things, which is pick on Costa Rica. No, that's not true. I love Costa Rica. It's a cool country, but it helps illustrate a point of mine. So when you go to Latin America, what you tend to get is sort of 2 scoops of culture, 2 scoops of biodiversity, and not so much of the other. So Costa Rica, for example, has incredible biodiversity. It's absolutely beautiful. There's all these outdoor activities that you can do, but it maybe is not as rich on some of the cultural aspects. On the other end of things, you have countries like, say, Argentina or Chile, which have this tremendous, incredible, beautiful, diverse cultures, but maybe not as much biodiversity. I don't want to say they don't have any, but it's, you know, not on the level of their culture. Colombia is that amazing spot that just has everything. So geographically speaking, we are the most biodiverse country in the world by square meter, and in totality, number 2 after Brazil. We are the only country in South America that has both Caribbean or Atlantic as well as Pacific. You can see in the middle here, we're the only ones who have 3 ridges of the Andes Mountains. They're born in Colombia, they stretch all the way down to Argentina, and they're all quite different. The whole south of the country here is Amazon. The whole right side is plains. We have 2 deserts. We have snow-capped peaks. We have the best coffee regions in the world. So really, really great stuff. And in addition to that, we have incredible culture. We have cool big cities like Medellin and Bogota and Cartagena, which we'll talk about in a few minutes. We have 17 patrimonial villages that are part of this network that was designed after, you know, the classic villages from Mexico as well, where we have a lot of sort of ties culturally. We have more bird species than any other country, more orchid species than any other country, more indigenous tribes, more fruits and vegetables grown here, the oldest archaeological sites in the Americas. The point being, you can literally tailor, make, and design an itinerary based on the personality of any client that you have. We have somebody who's traveled with us 4 times and never visited the same place twice. We even have the 3rd largest coral reef in the world. Meg got to go snorkeling there back in February. It's absolutely gorgeous. So Colombia literally has it all. So we're starting on a good spot. Now, that said, 80% of people are going to want sort of the Rome, Florence, and Venice of Colombia, right? Which in this case would be Bogota, Medellin, and Cartagena. It doesn't necessarily mean that's perfect for everybody, but these are going to be the most common destinations, especially for first-time travelers. So starting with Colombia, starting with Bogota. So Bogota is the capital of the country. It's one of the 20 biggest cities in the world. It's terrific for people who want museums, culinary arts, sort of big city life. The way that we function is trying to look for some of the more interesting ways to do things. So obviously, you know, we're going to take people around the city to see a lot of the highlights. I'm not a super big museum person, but I have to say the Gold Museum in Bogota is absolutely stunning. It's incredible. It's much more of an archaeological museum than necessarily just this place with a lot of gold in it or jewelry. It's got a lot of indigenous history, a lot of political history. For anybody who has the budget and really wants an exclusive experience, we can actually shut off the museum and go around with the curator. But one thing that True Colombia tries to do is, whether the client sees it or not, we try to have a positive social impact every single day. So I'll give you an example. A lot of people like to go about an hour and a half outside of Bogota to this great spot called the Sal Cathedral. The Sal Cathedral is the largest underground Sal Cathedral in the world. And all that time that you spend on the highway, actually to us is a little bit of an opportunity. We work with a woman in the north of the city. Her name is Sophia. And Sophia is one of the best well-known, maybe absolutely just top-notch horse trainer in Colombia. And she has an equine center where she does horse therapy for underprivileged blind children. Pretty amazing, much better than anything that I've ever done. So what we do is we take clients there so they can see the type of thing that their trip is helping us to support. And then using these horses, which you can imagine are incredibly well trained, we actually ride from the city of Bogota across the Bogota savannah, meeting the campesinos, the people who live out there, the farmers, having a picnic, lunch, being outside, seeing this incredible countryside. And we ride and finish at the Sal Cathedral, where then people can have their private guide take them down to the bottom, learn about the architecture of all of this place, and then go in, obviously, private vehicle over to one of those villages that I was telling you about, which you can see in the second picture there, which is called Villa de Leyva. Villa de Leyva is this 400-year-old village. Sort of the rights of man were originally translated into Spanish by Antonio Nariño. And it's also the only place in Colombia with really great wine. There in Villa de Leyva, we work with a group of women who are recovering sort of old techniques of working with wool in order to hand make one of these very important ponchos in the region called a ruana, which is the typical clothing of the area. So in that manner, clients are getting to connect to Colombia. They're getting to meet these really, really tremendous people, and they're leaving a great footprint behind so they can feel great about their trip while they're doing it. Let's move on to Medellin, right now. Again, I'm obviously maybe not the most objective person as I live here, but Medellin is incredible. A lot of people, a lot of other companies will glaze over Medellin because they might not think that there's a lot to do here. We couldn't disagree more. We think it's one of the biggest jewels that Colombia has, that you can do an entire trip even just in this area. Look, a lot of people always ask, is the city dangerous? No, you should absolutely feel safe coming here. I can spew off a lot of statistics to make people feel safe, but I'm more than happy to show people around. So being very upfront, until 2007, it was the most dangerous city in the world. It was this big war zone. And since then, it's twice won World Travel Rewards top city destination in South America. It is this changed incredible story, one of the safest big cities in South America. So obviously, we're going to show people around, give them the theoretical, take them to a lot of the interesting places, but we also want to tether those connections that I was talking about. So you can see those musicians on the left-hand side there. And that is about this really incredible story. And so in the 1990s, there was this guy named Juan Guillermo Campo. And Juan Guy had this insane idea that a kid who touches a musical instrument will never touch a gun. And against all odds, he started taking classical musical instruments like violins and cellos and basses up into the most dangerous neighborhoods in the most dangerous city in the world. And everyone thought he was crazy. The government thought he was crazy. The paramilitaries thought he was crazy. The guerrillas thought he was crazy. The gangs fought against him. And against all odds, he managed to put together the first youth orchestra in the country of Colombia. And these kids who had never left their neighborhoods did 2 tours of Europe, and they actually played for the Pope and the Vatican. And unbeknownst to them, this concert got telecast onto live TV in Colombia. So when these kids landed in their airplane on the way back, they were heroes. The press was waiting for them. The same gangs that were threatening them went out to the streets to clap and give them applause. And this program today has been credited with saving some 40,000 lives. And so what we like to do with clients is take them in the morning to see one of these programs, to understand how these kids are learning, and not just necessarily to be musicians. Some of them are learning to be doctors and lawyers and engineers, and they're getting all these opportunities that they would never have. This program has a luthier program, so these kids are learning how to actually build instruments. And yes, some of them become professional musicians as well. It's absolutely incredible. And what we do is at night, we rent out the Botanic Garden. And we have a private spot. The garden just opens up for us, and we get to go in and have this private dinner where 3 of the now adult musicians, who are some of the best in the country, who were part of that first class, come and play a private concert. But as a wonderful surprise, Juan Guillermo, the founder of the program, is waiting to have dinner with the clients to tell them the whole story of putting this together. So in that way, you're not just hearing or learning about the change that Medellin underwent. You're meeting a lot of those heroes that were part of that change. Okay, so that takes us up to Cartagena, one of the places most people have heard of. It's probably the most famous city in Colombia. It's where all the cruise ships stop. And there is what Cartagena is and what it isn't. And I think there's a little bit of a misnomer with that. So Cartagena is a beautiful city. It's terrific for architecture, for colonial Spanish history, for shopping. It's probably the best spot in Colombia. For food, it's really, really wonderful. Now, are there beaches there? There are beaches there. There's the Rosario Islands, and we can absolutely get people a boat to go out for the day. There's the Sofitel Calablanca Resort and Brew, and those are fine. I'm going to be upfront and tell you they're not the best beaches in Colombia. They're just fine. They're great beaches for people who want an easy beach vacation or a vacation near Cartagena, or they maybe don't have very many days. But in terms of like a terrific, beautiful Caribbean beach vacation, Cartagena is not the best spot. I would recommend more Santa Marta, which is a little further north, or an island that I'm going to tell you about in a minute. But for people who want that architecture, the romanticism, the shopping, the food, the colonial Spanish history, Cartagena is absolutely fantastic. Which brings me back to the beach. Providencia Island, in my opinion, is the most beautiful spot in the Caribbean. It is this small, barely inhabited spot that has been closed for the last few years and is recently reopened. There's no real hotels on the island. We work with 3 of the best villas or private homes on the island. We make sure that somebody from our team in Medellin is there at all times on the island to help your clients make sure that everything is absolutely perfect. We have terrific, outstanding, very close relationships with the islanders whom we work hand in hand with. And this island is so cool because it's what I was mentioning at the beginning. You have the 3rd largest coral reef in the world. I've had the best snorkeling that I've ever had there on the island. I've had some of the best scuba diving. I mean, quite frankly, I had better scuba diving in Providencia than I did at Galapagos. Though Galapagos is also this tremendous, wonderful destination. Yeah, there's hiking on the island. There's horseback riding. There's cooking classes. There's hanging out at 2 beaches. So Meg's actually got a background of one of the really cool sort of local beach bars that's there. And I'll tell you, the first time I went to this island, there's this long beach called Southwest, and it's probably somewhere between half a mile and a mile long. And we walk on, and there's maybe 10 people, maybe at most 10 people on the beach. And I look, and the person who's showing us around the very, very first time we went is really like kind of huffing and puffing. We went, "What's wrong? What's going on?" And they said, "No, this beach is packed today. This is no good." And that's how it always is. It's just stunning. There's plenty of space. The water's warm, and it's this terrific experience. We do a ton with our company with flavors, cooking classes, tastings, things like that. I'm one of 2 certified sommeliers or rum sommeliers in the country. These are big passion projects that we have. We can do these in different places around the country. But for any foodie guests that you have, believe me, we're foodies as well. Which brings me to Cannua. So in 2015, we were very frustrated that people who were looking for ecotourism were going to less diverse countries. They were going to Costa Rica and Ecuador and Chile and Thailand, and they weren't coming to Colombia. And we realized that it was because there was no infrastructure for people to be able to do it very well. So we decided to provide a solution to that. And that became our baby, which is Cannua. Cannua is the first hotel in the world built primarily out of compressed earth bricks that we made on site from the same soil that we're on. And it's one of the most sustainable hotels in Latin America. And like I mentioned, it's a National Geographic Experiences Collection hotel as well. So where the heck is it? If you see this circle in the middle here that says Rio Negro, that is where the international airport is. And if you see this big circle on the left, that is Medellin. So the airport for Medellin, the international airport, is actually about 45 minutes from the city. If you see on the right, this is us. We're actually equidistant in terms of time from the airport. And then you can see Guatapé out here, which is one of the most popular destinations. All the big tourism growth in this region is happening out here, and we're kind of in the middle of it. The other cool thing is that from Cannua to Medellin is only about an hour and a half. So for people who want to see Medellin, but maybe don't want to stay out there because it's really, really bustling and they want something that's calmer, you can stay up in Cannua. So let me show you a little bit of it. This video is a few years old now, but we have a North Andean cloud forest. This is a historic property. When you land at Jose Maria Cordoba Airport, Jose Maria Cordoba was a revolutionary who used to cross our property. When we purchased it, there were no trees. It was all prairie land that had been used for horses and cows, and we reforested the mountainside. 2 years running, we've been nominated as finalists for the best fine dining in the country. Our head chef, Marconi Righi, used to work at the 5th best restaurant in the world. We grow the vast majority of our produce on site, chemical free, and we local source everything else. Like I mentioned, sustainability is something that is huge for us. And we want every guest to understand what that is. So the whole hotel was designed under a design philosophy called permaculture, which is a design philosophy based on the observation of nature. So everybody gets to do a permaculture session where they get to learn about the basis of philosophy, then walk around the property, see the impact that we've actually had, taste a bunch of strange plants and edible flowers, and see cool colored beans and things like that. Because we want people to understand how it possibly is that this was the property when we got it, and this is how it looks now. We have 4 classes of rooms. In the main building, we have 5 superior and 5 deluxe. The deluxe have vaulted ceilings. They have private balconies. They've got these great views of the valley below. And then the crown jewels of the property are the cabañas. We have 6 one-level cabañas and 2 junior suites. So the junior suites are about the size of a small apartment. I always forget what they are in square feet, but they're about 70 square meters, and the cabañas are about 50 square meters. The junior suite is more than big enough for a family, and the cabañas are absolutely terrific for a couple. If they're with a kid and they want to add an extra bed, no problem whatsoever. Here's the cool thing: we don't price gouge. We try and stay within the costs of the calculated costs, obviously, and the cost of the region. So the most expensive room we have at the property is the junior suite, which goes for about $400 a night. We have 18 rooms in total on a 30-acre property, and you can do a buyout of the entire property for between $4,000 and $5,000 a night. So if you have a small group or a big family, it's an amazing place to go. Like I said, food is huge for us. Marconi actually runs the restaurant under the same philosophy as the hotel. And so that means everything from the fact that we don't serve beef because Colombia has had a major deforestation process, and primarily caused by the cattle industry, to making sure that even our breads are not done under an industrial process. They're all done by hand. They go for various fermentations. Our starters have been fermenting for various years. And those are the types of things that we look to do in restaurant. It's a burger's paradise. There's tons around here. I've taken all these photos, with the exception of the owl that was taken by a professional photographer. The other photos were all taken on my old cell phone. It's really great and easy to be able to see these incredible birds. On site, we have lots of activities. We have chocolate tastings and coffee workshops. Obviously, we do rum tastings. We have bird watching. We have a small spa. We have one of the coolest things that I really, really like doing. It's outside the box for a lot of people. We hike to a neighbor's property. They have this 150-year-old home made out of earth. It's like this living museum. And together with them, we make Colombian arepas, which are the most important starch in the country. We make mazamorra, which is like this little dessert. And then we actually milk their cows, and we make Colombian farmers cheese together, so that they can, and before planting a tree and helping to reforest the property. So you get to have your own arepas and Colombian farmers cheese, and you actually get to live like a Colombian for a day. It's absolutely wonderful and totally charming. In the area off-site, we have a whole day based around flowers. Meg can tell you a little bit more about that. If you've seen the movie Encanto, you know about the importance of flowers to Colombia, and especially to this region. We have level 1 or level 3 and 4 whitewater rafting. We have day trips to Guatapé, where you can hike up the huge monolith. Like I mentioned, you can do day trips into the city. We have visits to organic cacao farms and so much more. It's just this great place where you can either do cultural or adventure activities and really see this hidden corner of Colombia. The final thing I want to talk about here is coffee, because it's Colombia. How do we not talk about coffee? My wife always gets angry when I mention this because she's from the supposed coffee region, right? But the supposed coffee region is not even one of the 6 major coffee producing regions of the country. It's a beautiful area. It's got some stunning hiking and other things. It just doesn't have a lot of coffee. An and I spent about a year creating relationships with 3 of the most important farms in the country. These are working farms. They don't allow other people to go there, just us. And they are all located within 2 hours of Medellin. So the first one we have is San Cayetano. This is literally the first coffee farm in the country. It's the most important farm that Colombia has. There are 3 presidents of Colombia who have been part of this family. They're the founders of the Coffee Federation of Colombia. And this is the place to go if you want the history of Colombia. Guests get to stay in the owner's mansion for the night. You can see the view is not half bad. They've got an infinity pool, a coffee wood-fed chimney. We take care of the food, the wine, the beer, and it's just a wonderful, wonderful off-the-beaten path experience. Then there's Cocondo, which I mentioned earlier. Cocondo is the first internationally certified organic farm. This is the coffee that we serve at the hotel, and this is like my happy place. It is coffee grown completely under a reforested forest. This place was actually declared a reserve by the federal government, and there are endangered animals that only live on this farm. And it is one of the best organic coffees in the world and one of the most recognized. And then finally, Roldan. Roldan is the leader in scientific investigation of coffee on the continent, and the first farm in this region to have won the Gold Cup for the best coffee in the country. And the best part is that the owners are completely fluent in English as well. So for people who want to have a direct interaction, this is absolutely outstanding. For everywhere else, guests are traveling with our team. We don't outsource. We make sure that it's people who are directly trained by Anna and myself. And we make sure that we really work as hosts and translators. The protagonist is the person that you're meeting. If you go to Kakondo, we're not interesting. It's interesting to meet the people who run and own the farm. And those are the types of places that we're looking to take and introduce people to. Okay, that said, a lot of talking. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you learned. And I'd love to turn it over to any of you to see if you have any questions.
Yay, great job, Brian. Let's see if anyone has any questions, feel free to put them in the chat box or the Q&A. I can say, although I shouldn't, that because we're not allowed favorites here at J.MAK, you know, like they're all our children and we love them equally. But with that being said, being able to go to Colombia, obviously Brian's passion for the country, for sustainability is palpable. I mean, you feel it, like it's just absolutely incredible. He is an encyclopedia of knowledge when it comes to the country and, you know, the spots. I love the fact that this company you know, feels like they have a duty to the country to show it in its best light and do justice for it, because it really is beautiful and safe. I mean, that's always our first question, right, Brian, is it safe? And I felt more safe in Colombia than I do in the US sometimes. So to be honest. So the cities are vibrant, they're beautiful. Medellin was like the coolest jungle city that I've ever been to. It like literally blew my mind. Walking around the streets with your cerveza and the dancing, the food's incredible. And then Isle de Providencia being, you know, here where I am at the beach bar, my new favorite Caribbean destination too. So I cannot say enough about the country. I mean, being able to visit really, really helps too. And I think we're kind of turning those tides. Clients are always looking for, you know, something that's kind of off the beaten path a little bit. And Colombia really is that, right? It's not Costa Rica, like we mentioned, and sorry to crap on Costa Rica so much in this webinar.
No, they're great too. They're great too.
They're so great, but also there's so much more authenticity throughout Colombia. The experiences that we did were like once in a lifetime opportunities. So Brian can talk about Colombia. I will talk about Colombia all day long too. So let's let you guys ask some questions here. So let's go to the Q&A first. Brian and Stacy wants to know if you can comment on the weather and the different kind of seasons and the different cities.
Awesome. I can definitely do that. Before that, Carissa wrote that it's her second favorite country. I kind of like to know what the first favorite was. I'm feeling a little edgy about that one. But okay. So the weather question is terrific. We are a tropical country. We are on the equator. So that means two things. There's good and then there's the unpredictable. So the good is that the weather is pretty much the same the entire year round. In theory, May and then October, November are the rainy seasons. No, those aren't deal breakers. You can still go out and do stuff. You just have to be ready for rain. The only other thing I would say is because it's the tropics, it can rain at any point. It usually doesn't. If it does, it's usually heavy and for a very, very short period of time. And that doesn't get in the way of doing any activities. The weather will vary wildly depending on where you are in the country. And so what we'll do with everybody who comes is we'll send them a suggested packing list for every single day of activity they have. So Bogota, for example, is very high up. It's at like 8,000 feet. And so it's going to be a bit cooler up there. Cannua, because it's in the cloud forest during the day, it's going to be around 80 degrees. At night, it might drop down to like 40, 50. And then Medellin is just going to be absolutely perfect. It's basically 75, 80 every day, all day, even at night. It's just amazing. But then you go to Cartagena and you're on the coast and it is sweltering and humid, and that's, you know, what you sign up for. So, or you go to Providence and, you know, if you have any problem, you just jump in the water. So, but there is very little variation throughout the year.
Perfect. Nancy had a question about what the price point would be for a family of 4 for a week, like on average, I would say. Let's do that. And then she's curious about price points over festive, how much that increases and what the availability looks like.
Awesome. Thanks for the second question. That was one thing that I wanted to add. We don't set a minimum, and we can do breakouts if people want. Obviously, we prefer to just do global, but we can do breakouts, and we can work with people's budgets to an extent. I would say average for a family of 4, you're probably looking for like 10 days, something between like 4,000 and 5,000 per person. If we need to, you know, change hotels or styles or locations, we can do that in order to meet their budget, or we can go up as well. In general, Cartagena is going to be the most expensive destination. Providence is pretty pricey as well. So it's just, you know, figuring out what that shuffle of places are. Now, during festive, things go up. In the Andes, like, you know, Bogota, Medellin, these areas, it's going to go up, but it's not going to be, you know, super significant. Some hotels might go up 10, 20%, but in general, things will be stable. Cartagena is another story. If you're booking over festive and somebody wants Cartagena, they need to book now. From about the 27th of December until the 2nd of January in Cartagena, there's 2 major problems. One, the hotels put in 5 to 8 night minimums. And personally, I think that's too long to be in Cartagena. The other thing is that they triple their prices. So a hotel room that's $250 a night right now is going to cost $700, $750 during festive. The Sofotels, which are the Santa Clara and Calablanca, which are the 2 most famous hotels out there, are going to be $1,000 per room during festive, whereas they may be something between $300 and $500 right now. The 2 best hotels there, Casa San Agustin and Casa Pestagua, are also going to be $1,000 a night. So, you know, I would try to keep that in mind. If somebody's coming from, say, like the 21st to New Year's, what I try to do is stack them to go to Cartagena first so that they can get out of the city before those limitations and those price hikes come in.
Right on. That leads me to another question that I have, Brian, as far as, so Cartagena is obviously like the most popular, the most well-known. So I feel like a lot of American clientele want to include it in the itinerary. Are there other suggestions kind of outside of Cartagena that still give like the same vibes, but maybe less touristy? Because even when we visited, it was a lot of cruise ship folks just making it a stop. So is there anything like that vibe, but still with the accessibility of Cartagena?
Yeah, Meg, thank you. I love the question. People who really get to know us know that it's maybe not our favorite destination for exactly the reasons that Meg just said. It's by far the most touristy place, and she's right. Like when those cruise ships land, boom, the whole city just gets flooded with people. It's the colonial architecture for a coastal city is there, but like in those villages that I was mentioning, you're going to get the much more sort of authentic Colombian vibe. I would answer the question kind of in two ways. One is if people really want to know culture in Colombia, Cartagena is not the place to go. It was a slave port and fortress for the Spanish. If people really want to know culture, they're going to go to other places where there were indigenous or where Colombians really sort of established things, like up in the Andes. And if they want to see those villages that I was talking about, that's going to really supplant a lot of what you would get. So if you want coast because you want beach and stuff, there's a city that I was mentioning before called Santa Marta, which is where Tayrona Park is. Maybe the city itself is not quite as sort of like gorgeous and big and colonial as Cartagena, but it is so much more beautiful, and you can get a lot of that same vibe without having to go too far and still being on the mainland Colombia. And then, yeah, I mean, like, honestly, I would supplant that time with spending more time up in the Andes, where it's more vibrant, it's more fun, it's more authentic, it's more local.
Yeah. Yeah, sometimes people have a little bit trouble getting away from that waterfront kind of area though too, right? But at
Yeah,
least there's a
absolutely.
good mix. Lucy had a question too that AMA Waterways is doing a river cruise in Colombia starting in 2025. Any thoughts or insights?
Yes, Lucy, great question. Well, I can tell you off the bat that we will be running AMA's pre-trips to the Medellin area. So I work with them a lot, talk with them a lot. And if for anybody who's going to be booking and doing the pre-trip, that'll be with us. It's going to be way more scaled down, obviously, because it's going to be for those big cruise crowds. So you're not going to have sort of like the private trips, but to give you an idea of sort of the synergy that we have, those are very lofty cruises that they're going to be doing. I've seen the ships that they're building; they look gorgeous. They're big. I believe I can't remember what their current launch time is. I know that they're projecting for sort of January, February of 2025. That's going to be cool. It's going down the Magdalena River, so people are going to see Cartagena and Barranquilla. They're going to see some of those river villages that are down on the plains, and they'll see some really great, very, very off the beaten track places. I would say what you make up in getting off the beaten path and doing a really tremendous high level river cruise. The only thing that you maybe lose out on is some of the diversity of seeing the rest of the country. So I might try to book your clients to do maybe a few day extension to see another part of the country as well, especially while they're already here. The other cruise recently that's been going through parts of Colombia, although it's much, much faster, is the new Explora cruise as well. But AMA's great. I think that cruise is going to be solid.
Nice. Great. I don't think we have any more questions. Last chance, folks. Put them in. Just kidding. You know who to reach out to. We're always around. We're always here to help. Brian is a fabulous partner. I can't say enough, Brian. We had such an amazing time showing us around Colombia. So definitely pitch it to your clients. Festive is coming up, and I'm sure there are folks that still are not booked. So send those bookings to Brian pronto. We'd love to see them. You can reach out to the team at True Colombia Travel through their J.MAK@ email address, which you can find on their partner page on jmak.com. We'll also be sending a follow-up email. I'll send all y'all's emails to Brian so he can send, the sales presentation. And then I'll also send a recording of this webinar just in case you want to rewatch it or you've missed anything. And then you can always go onto our YouTube channel and look up at J.MAK Hospitality for any previous webinar recordings that you might have missed. So thank you all so much for joining. Brian, always a pleasure. Kiss the puppy dogs for me. The new puppies. Brian has 2 new puppies. Yay. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. Take
Bye,
care.
Brian.